Hi, everybody. Short form videos, thought leadership, increased activity on LinkedIn. What do these have in common? We are seeing more and more of this type of activity, and more of it is founder led content. In today's episode, we talk to a founder who's leading the way for his company, and we're discussing taking creative risks to scale, as well as we're going to talk about short form video and how that is impacting our company. Stick around. We'll be right back with another episode of Strategy Talks.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Strategy Talks. I am so excited to be here today. It's another Tuesday morning. We're live. And if you're here live, welcome on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm so excited you're here. If you're watching this on the replay, please put hashtag replay in the comments so that my guests and myself can see that you're there and you're listening and you're watching this. And last but not least, I want to welcome those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. Quite a few of you right here. And I want to make sure that you know you're appreciated. And without much further ado, we have so much to talk about. My guests and I were in the green room and we're like, we got to get this episode started because we went way ahead of ourselves. You know, without much further ado, I'm bringing up on the stage my friend Chris Savage from Wistia. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just diving deep into this content about short form video, founder-led content, LinkedIn short form, like everything. I was like, let's just get this started.
I know. Yeah, we couldn't help ourselves. It was one of those, I find this too often with my own podcast of just like, you start talking to the guests and you really have a lot to talk about. And then you're like, wait, should we even be talking or do we need to be silent until this thing goes? So we don't we don't get it all out of our system. So yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm super excited to be here. Excited to talk to you about taking creative risks and also, of course, like founder-led content.
Yeah, so let's set the stage. You and I met at Inbound in September, and you have your own podcast. So you asked me to come, and we're doing like a short form of your podcast, Talking Too Loud, which I love because if you know me, you know I don't shy away from talking loud or saying things. And so we got talking, and I was sharing with Chris my journey with short form video on LinkedIn, and you know. Chris and his team were at Inbound. Chris, you were like, you listened and you instantly implemented, which I absolutely loved. So what's happened with that short form video, specifically to LinkedIn, since we talked in September?
Yeah. So no, first of all, thank you for coming on Talking Too Loud. That was awesome. And you gave me a lot of actual advice to our audience. And one of the things people don't always realize about podcasts is like, as someone who is a host, like you have questions and you get the answers and then you can actually use the answers. And so that's what ended up happening. And yeah, for context, basically, I'd been posting on LinkedIn basically daily for 2 years. Started with text posts, got that going, then started a newsletter and got that going. And growth was like starting to pick up. I'm doing a lot of video, but usually landscape, so 16:9. And you said, hey, I think like vertical is really working. There's a vertical tab on LinkedIn that's a lot like TikTok. I had seen it. I did, but it's kind of hard to know, like, how do you get stuff in there? How does it work? Because it's not set up where you go to that tab and you click upload. Right. It's actually just pulling from the post, right? And so after that week, then I was like, all right, I'm going to try this. So the next week I posted a vertical video every day. And the last one of those videos, so I posted 7, I think. The last one took off. Yeah. And where normally I'd get a few thousand views on something, maybe something killed it, we might get like 10,000 views. That video got 400,000 views. Yeah. Yes. And then the following week, because when something's working, you need to double down on it or quadruple down on it. Instead of doing 1 video a day, I did 4. And so, and that
Which
week
is
I had,
crazy. Okay,
yeah,
guys, listen to this. He did
yeah,
4 videos a day. Now, you own Wistia, right? You're like
yeah.
video company. So that makes a little bit more sense. You've got a team, but still 4 videos a day. So what happens?
Yeah, so of those 4 days, like so about 20 that week, I had 3 take off and similar scales, like 300,000 views, 300,000 views, 200,000 views. And it really like it was very interesting because I just want to know why. Like, why is this working? And I looked into the data a little bit, and I didn't realize this, but like I think you know this, but the peak usage times of LinkedIn are like 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern. It was really by time zone, 12 to 1, and then 6 to 8 p.m.
Yep.
But the other interesting thing is that like 57% of the engagements on LinkedIn are on mobile, and 91% of video views on LinkedIn are on mobile.
Yep.
And so what really seems like is happening is like the demand to watch videos on LinkedIn is on mobile, and it's showing up at the end of the day. It's actually even showing up on the weekend.
Right.
And that is a pretty shocking thing.
What I have found, and you just mentioned that, my Friday videos, usually I double down on Fridays. I've done up to 3 videos on a Friday because one of them will usually go in the video feed and get views all weekend long. Like the Friday videos do well all the way to Monday or Tuesday. I have experimented 4 weekends in a row and uploaded videos on Saturdays and Sundays. Those videos don't go in the feed. They have to have gained some kind of traction on Friday in order to do it's fascinating to me. I don't know how it works.
It is very fascinating and like very counterintuitive. Like if you've grown up using LinkedIn, right? You don't think of LinkedIn, at least I didn't think of LinkedIn as like a mobile first thing that people are checking on the weekend to like see what's going on with like work. And that's what it's become. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very different than when it started. Yeah. And I think, I know a lot of people who have LinkedIn open as a tab during the day. And so they just assume that's the main way people use it. It's like, no, you're the exception actually. So that was very surprising. And then I've seen the same thing, posting stuff on Saturday and Sunday doesn't seem to get into the feed where during the week it does. I've also noticed actually, I don't know if you're doing this, but, I was posting usually one text post a day and then a newsletter once a month. And I felt like the weeks when I was posting 4 videos a day, I was not as on my game on those other posts. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I think this is also not a good thing because like if you think of the vertical videos, like what's going to attract someone, you need to retain them.
Right.
And so to retain them, I think the text post, the newsletter, and then actually having like a podcast, actually having some other thing that people can consume to continue the relationship with you feels really important.
Right. I feel like these videos are top funnel. And so the middle of the funnel, your newsletter, your podcast, your live shows are going to do better because then people, because they see your video, they follow you because I've gotten lots of new followers. I know you probably have too. And then they get to know you by those other posts. So let's talk about this, actually the topic, creative risk. So you're all about testing. I mean, you've been in the video industry for 18 years. Wistia is 18 years old. So that's a long time. So what kind of things can we talk about when we're talking about creative risk? And, as a founder, this is another very interesting thing. Last year, everybody's talking about thought leadership. And I think there was a lot of confusion about thought leadership. And I saw an interesting quote just the other day, and I'm like, that's what it is. You can't call yourself a thought leader. Okay. Somebody else has got to think, wow, they're a thought leader because you're inspiring them with your thoughts. You can't make it so, right? So that's one. And then now it's more about founder-led content. I keep hearing that in the last 2 months. I've heard more and more people, which is really what you're doing, Chris, right? Yeah. Founder-led content. You're creating the content. You're the founder. You're showing your company. You're showing people what can be done with content, and you're bringing people into the fold of Wistia. You're showing people what your company is doing by letting them to get to know you. Correct?
That's right. I mean, there's a lot in here, and I feel like I have a lot of evidence that why this works.
Okay, let's do it.
So I think the first thing is there's like just the reality of the social platforms today. And the reality of the social platforms is if you are a brand, like a company, and it's very hard to get a lot of organic reach. And so for you to get reach, you have to pay. That is basically what has happened. Almost every social platform starts as open to everybody. Brands obviously want to get there and get in front of people. They start doing it. If brands do like what I was just talking about, if they make like 10 pieces of content a day, it's going to overwhelm the feed. You're not going to see actual people. You're going to feel like everything's an ad. So they can't let that happen. And so therefore they change it. So you have to pay to get reach as an ad, but they can't really stifle the individuals who are posting, or there'll be no content. So there's a very simple thing of like, why is everyone talking about founder-led growth? Like, I think part of the reason is that founders actually can get a lot of organic reach much more easily than a brand can. It's just the basics of the business model.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is, when we were early on in Wistia, and early is relative, so like 4 or 5 years in, we start making some videos that were purely for fun. We had someone who is on the team now, our head of production, but he didn't work at Wistia. He came in, he was a video producer. He shot a video of us just sitting there working, like doing nothing. Okay. And all he did is he put like text above our heads saying our names, which we thought was really cool. And, but honestly, I was nervous to share this video because there was 6 people on the team. We were for B2B companies already. It felt like we were going to seem too small and that people wouldn't trust us. But the video is so great. We're like, let's just put it on this like team page on our website. No one will really see it, but we can still see it. Like we can show it to people. And the video went viral. And we got a huge amount of traffic to the site.
Yeah.
It was the front page of Reddit. It was the front page of like Hacker News. And everyone's like, wow, so cool to see behind the scenes of this company and like yada, yada. And then what ended up happening is we had a 2-week trial, and 2 weeks later, we got a bunch of new customers.
Right.
And
so let's unpack this part, because you and I both were at Inbound, and I don't know if you caught Marcus Sheridan, but he said different is better than better. And I love that, 5 years into your journey, which is like 12, 13 years ago, you were different already.
Yes.
Because that's how you stand out. Even if you throw all the money, the huge budget that you have, if you want to outdo your competitors, you're only going to be marginally better, right? Because they have a budget too. But if you're different, you always stand out.
That's right. And I think it was like, we were super different because we were a small, tiny startup. We weren't afraid to show off who we were. And there was the first time that I realized, wow, brand, this ephemeral thing, like it moves the needle. Like this moved the needle more than all the blog posts I'd ever written about why at the time we were just doing video hosting, like why video hosting is so important. Like no one wanted to read that until they were really deep in the funnel. And so you needed something that people would care about at the top. And it was like the light bulb went on. I was like, like maybe brand really matters. And it gave us permission to try more things. And so over time, we've done many things, to your point, that are very different. Like one of the most successful campaigns we ever did is we did a feature-length documentary. And we gave this LA-based production agency $111,000. And we asked them to make 3 ads for us, one with $1,000 budget, one with a $10,000 budget, one with a $100,000 budget. And then we documented their creative process to show off the difference of like how budget and creativity is linked to video production. It's called 110-100. And when we did this documentary, it was funny because it seemed so crazy. I remember my head of the finance at the time was like, are you actually serious? Like, are we really going to like pay for this ad for these ads to happen? And it was funny because from my perspective, it felt like it couldn't lose because we had so many different ways it could win. It was like, okay, so first we're actually gonna have 3 ads that a professional made for us. So that seems good. And then my production team is gonna go and see this, and they're gonna get a chance to learn from a different team. Like the learning probably seems good.
Yeah.
Then the documentary itself might actually be good. That would be great if the documentary is good. That'd be great. Yeah. But then also we're gonna make a trailer of the documentary to promote it. And that will probably be a pretty amazing ad. And if you see it, you're gonna think, Wistia is a software company that just made a feature-length documentary. And so we're going to be super different than everybody else that had. And it worked like unbelievably well. Like it drove a huge amount of traffic. It drove a huge amount of time with the brand because when people made it in this documentary, they'd watch an hour and 40-minute thing. And ultimately it boosted brand search like tremendously. And so we got more of a marketing impact from that one documentary and that one marketing approach than we did basically for every single other thing we did the year previous. And if you looked at the difference, it would be like huge investment in brand, super creative, and really, really, really different.
Wow. That's a great creative risk, as we call it, as you called it, to do something completely different. I love that. And then I think what you're describing happened to me this year with my vertical videos, where it's completely different. I'm all in. I'm doing 1 or 2 a day. I'm sticking with it, and it's made more impact than everything I've done in the last like 5 years.
That's
in my
crazy.
business,
Yeah.
which is absolutely crazy. So I love that. I'd have to go look for it. I want to go watch it now.
Yeah, 1 to 100. You should definitely watch it. It stands up. It's really good. But yeah, I think there's also something you said earlier that I want to go back to that I think you've done, I've done, I see a lot of people do, which is if something starts working, often what we need to do is actually just do a lot more of the same exact thing. And I think that it's very tempting not to, because you're like, oh, well, this is my video strategy. I have my video strategy working. Like, I need to also make my newsletter work, or like, I need to make this other affiliate program work, or whatever the thing is. And often what I see, and we've made this mistake ourselves, is we go too wide on different things. When actually, if you can understand the core of why what you're doing is working, often there's ways you can go way bigger on the same thing. And that actually is the secret to growing. It's not just to add more channels. It's to get a channel that works and like make that channel work way, way, way better, which is often by doubling down, tripling down, finding different approaches to deliver a similar experience, but in a bigger way.
I love that. And that is exactly what you and I both are doing. And it's working. So I think it is very tempting, like you said, to then also do a newsletter and to also do this. And, but doubling down. And when I started going from 1 video a day to 2 videos a day, that was a huge investment of time
Yeah.
for me.
Oh,
I basically became my own biggest client.
Yeah.
And I don't have a big team. I have
Yeah.
2 VAs and that's it. And I'm it. So I was video editing 1-2 hours a day. That's time away from my business, but the return on investment is there. So doubling down on that. And then now that the impressions and the reach is waning a little bit on that video feed, it's not completely gone. It's still much better than a text post or whatever. I'm trying to find out different creative ways to scale it again, right? So what do we do next? Now, talking head videos work. So now what kind of videos are going to go get me back into the 100,000, 200,000 impression? So I love it. I love the testing, and it sounds like you do too. So part of doing creative or taking creative risks, Chris, is that coming up? Is it your ideas? Is it your team ideas? How you don't need buy-in. See, here's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
You don't need buy-in.
Yeah.
You do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the biggest pain points that I hear from marketers like myself. They don't get the buy-in. They don't get the CEO who says, sure, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and spend $111,000 on 3 ads, or sure, go ahead and post my vertical videos on LinkedIn 4 times a day. Because go ahead and test it. So how do we get this buy-in?
That's a great question. I think first of all, the creative ideas come from everywhere. And I think that has to be cultural. Like, you have to create the permission to do it. And I do think that unfortunately, sometimes people won't give you the buy-in, and then you can't do it. Like, I think sadly that happens a lot, is that you have a really senior leader who doesn't believe that this is going to make the difference. And so they just don't prioritize it, and you don't get a chance to do it. I think for the people who are open to it, most of the time, there's not enough of like talking about the qualitative responses. So what I mean by that is, you post a thing. What do the comments actually say? How often is the content mentioned in other conversations? Like, how often is it mentioned in sales? How much often is it mentioned in support? What is it like if you present at a conference? Like, what do the people say? Because usually what ends up happening, it's so tempting. It's like, well, how many leads do we get? And it's like, eventually, yes, you should get lots of leads if you open up a new channel. But at the very beginning of opening a channel, you're not going to. You have to assume it's going to take time and effort to figure out how to put the pieces together. Like, whatever the channel is, like, how should the content be? What's the offer? How often do people need to see it? Like, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that, like, what I've found is that it's actually the qualitative is really, really important. And I actually think product has figured this out. So if you're building products, any company that's very product centric, and I would hope any company that's selling a product is somewhat product centric, is basically the religion of the customer. Like, if you have a customer that you care about, what ends up happening is everyone's constantly interviewing them, constantly trying to understand what's working and what's not. It's not percentage of people who use it to start. It is like, Doreen, sit down with me and use Wistia and tell me what you think. I mean, even in the green room before it said this, I said to you, hey, if you get in there, just please send me all your feedback, blah, blah. And that will go directly to the teams that are working on that. And they will take clips from a conversation with a customer and share it across the business as evidence for why they're going to do something. That's how you build great product. On the marketing side, for some reason, people don't do that. They just jump often to the end result of the quantitative data. And then if it's not there, they move off of the thing, even if sometimes the qualitative is really good. And I just think if there's more of a religion of, like, looking at what customers actually say and what they actually care about, and they tell you where they heard about what you're doing, that can change the culture in a big way to give you more permission to be creative, actually. Because a lot of the times, those most creative things, people, you see it in the comments, like, this is amazing, I love this. And you might not have a huge number of views, but you should look at that as the same thing. It's like, you've built something that matters. How do you keep going?
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're a founder and you're skeptical, or you're a marketer and you work with a founder who's skeptical, one of the things that happened to one of my clients who's a founder, and we're doing some of that content. We literally started from scratch this year, startup SaaS company. And within 2 or 3 months of me posting out clips and showing him talking about the business and the product, he said that the nature of the demos changed. People used to come and they were cold. They didn't know what the product was. They didn't know what it could do. 2 to 3 months in, they come with questions and go, well, I watched this video on TikTok, or I saw you on Instagram, or, in the Facebook group, you said XYZ. Can you just show this to me? So they came completely prepared to the demo to talk to him about what they had already learned. That's powerful. That's what happens when you have content that talks about the product, the service that you offer. And especially with him, that was founder-led content that was out there. People were like, whoa, I just saw you on Instagram and you're here doing the demo with me. That one thing that you were talking about, can you show that to me? And he was like, it totally changed the sales process. So yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to a lot of people, and again, I keep saying this, but I've heard this for the last 14 years of in marketing. CEOs, founders that go, let's look at our competitors and let's do what they do. You can't be creative if you want to follow what your competitors do. A competitor analysis is really, really important. It's actually what I talked about when I spoke at Inbound. It's really important, but not for the reasons that most C-suite people think. You don't want to do a competitor's analysis to do what they do. You want to do competitor's analysis to understand what they're doing and how you can outdo them, not by doing it better, but by doing it different. And so what would you say to somebody that is a founder that is listening and they're like, Chris, you're crazy, way too creative? What is it that would convince somebody to go jump in and start creating content, even if they're don't necessarily want to be on video, even if they're thinking it's too much work? If they have a team that can do it, what would you say?
Well, I would say that you need to, one of the easiest ways to be different is to be yourself. We are really good at human beings at recognizing faces. Like that's why a lot of the content we're talking about actually works, because like you can tell that's Doreen, you can tell that's Chris, and you can see someone who looks pretty similar to me, and you're like, that's not good, Chris. Like that's Seth MacFarlane. Like you can. We're very, very good at telling faces apart, and like that's, I think, one of the reasons why just having that connection with an individual person matters so much. Like we were just saying at the founder-led content, the feeling, like you see someone around, you feel like you see them, you see their content, you feel like they have authority. If you actually interact with them, oh my gosh, there they are. And it's just really that you have a relationship. It's like a parasocial relationship, but it's a relationship to start. And so I think it's actually one of the easiest things you can do. And the fact that it is scary to get on camera is one of the reasons that it works. Right? Like I think it's always been the part of this market that's funny, where people are like, I want to do video, but I'm afraid to do it. And I was like, most people, that's how they feel. What does that mean? It's like, if most people feel that way, most people aren't doing it. And therefore there's still an opportunity to do it. And so I think it is about being yourself. I think it's also about being really different. People don't like things that are just the same. And they can't tell them apart. And there's a reason why, like the most successful marketing campaigns are usually something very different, very new, potentially very edgy, something that we haven't seen before, because that is what stands out. And when you think about it from the audience perspective, that gives us the best dopamine hit, right? It's like, It's like the most exciting thing is what we want. And so I think there's a real reason why you get outsized returns by doing the very, very different stuff. I do think when you're doing that, you have to have more confidence in like what you stand for and what you don't. I think you have to have a good idea of like where your voice makes sense to be a part of a conversation, where it doesn't. That's why folks need to work with somebody like you who really knows this stuff and can help them, guide them to increase their chances of success. But I also just look at this as like, just like anything in business, like it doesn't work 100% of the time. In fact, it's going to have a pretty significant failure rate. And so that's totally fine. You just have to know that going in. And when you know it going in, it means that you should be more comfortable actually moving more quickly and perseverating less on a lot of these ideas, and looking at it as like, if it's, I look at the whole thing, like building products, marketing, selling, as really what you want to do is you want the pace of improvement to be as high as possible. And the way you do that is by trying a lot of stuff. And
that is the agile way. Are you guys an agile company? Is that what
we're
agile framework?
Agile, yes.
Yeah. Because that's, it's continuous improvements, and giving your marketing team, your sales team, permission to fail, to try new things. If you're a founder and you get upset or mad when they've spent money and it didn't work, you've now squashed their creativity, and they'll never try something again and won't come back to you with another new idea. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I love hearing that you guys are implementing all of that. And that's what I do in my marketing as well. Hey, Chris, we've come to the end. Where can people find out more about you and where you're most active? And then let's do that. Let's talk about Wistia just for a minute.
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active by far. You can find my podcast, Talking Too Loud. You can search Talk Too Loud podcast, you'll find it. And then Wistia. So Wistia is a video marketing platform, hosting, analytics, custom player, all the things help you have control over your videos, understand how they're performing on your site. And then we've expanded a lot in the recent few years. And we have editing capabilities, and we have recording capabilities, and we have a webinar platform. And our whole goal is to make it, for anyone who's using video a lot in their marketing, like a video first marketer, trying to make it as easy as possible, save you as much time as possible in all those workflows between the different tools that you're using, and give you one place that makes it so that the percentage chance of your videos working goes up, so that you are happier with the results.
Yeah. And one of the things that you said in the green room that sparked my interest is that you have a workflow for team members, right? So people can go in there and you can share things with your team.
Exactly. Yes. And it's funny, our roots were the first paying customers we got in 2007 were people who used Wistia to share video privately. So it was like medical device companies and all these different, Cirque du Soleil was an early customer for people who were like when they were looking to hire talent to come on Fire Breathers or whatever, they would upload it to Wistia and comment. But then pretty quickly, it was video production companies and sharing unfinished things. And that's what I used to do right before Wistia, like in college. And then, I edited a lot and I was printing DVDs and shipping them. And so when we got to building this stuff, I was like, hey, I know the problem here. This is what we can solve. And it turns out that's another funny thing is like such a huge percentage of the videos that we make, someone else needs to see them. Someone needs to approve them. Someone needs to give
That's what I was getting to. I haven't really found a great tool for approval process. So I have a video, I create it, I download it, I send it to a client. They have to look at it and they go, can you change out this or change the color of this? Or now I have to, there's time downloading, uploading. If we could do that in one.
That's exactly right. So like we have that built in, like you have a team member who, like you give them permanent access to certain folders and they can keep coming back in. But we also just have a share for review process. So you can have a video and you create a review link and send it to them, which is really nice. If you're only working with somebody once, then you just type in your own name and you give your comments and approval. It saves it, goes back. And it's just what we see in general is that everyone's being asked to use video. This is exactly what we're talking about. And it turns out that that means that we need a lot of video producers to help people figure out how to do this stuff.
Yep.
And as an individual, you have to deal with more of this complexity of like, which format should it be in? And like, how should I export this thing and all that kind of stuff. And so we're just trying to give you, I don't think I can cut it down from 10 tools to 1, but I think I could maybe get you from using 10 video tools down to like 3.
That's pretty good.
It's been fun. So Wistia.com to learn more about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. I'll put Chris's information, of course, in the show notes. Thank you for those of you who were here live. And those of you who are listening and watching us on the replay, again, special shout out to our podcast listeners of Strategy Talks. Thank you so much, Chris, for being with me today. Safe travels to Cambridge today, and I will see everybody back next week. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Bye.